My name is Dr. Joelle Rodway. I'm an assistant professor in the Educational Leadership Studies program at the Faculty of Education. My teachable areas are in educational leadership and administration. I focus particularly on school improvement, organizational learning, and whole system educational change. Online teaching and learning has always been part of my professional practice. Many of the courses in the Educational Leadership program at the Faculty of Education, particularly at the graduate level, are offered to students across Canada and internationally through digital learning platforms. So part of my own professional learning coming to my faculty position here has been focused on developing online teaching and learning strategies. Similarly, even at the undergraduate level, there have been times when courses have been offered online, and that's required me to adjust courses that are typically offered in a face-to-face format to online teaching and learning environments. So prior to the pandemic, I was lucky enough that I had some sort of rudimentary foundational skills in leading teaching and learning experiences online. The transition to remote teaching for me was fairly seamless, and I would credit that to the fact that because online teaching had already been part of my professional experience, my transition was facilitated by some of the foundational skills that I had already developed in using various tools within the Brightspace platform to support teaching and learning experiences for our students. So for me, I integrate digital tools into my regular classroom day-to-day practice anyway. So my class was already used to using the Brightspace core shell. We were regularly using that in a face-to-face learning environment anyway. So the transition for me was quite easy in the sense that I just had to quickly give them a primer on how to find me in an online room. And the next week we just met virtually face-to-face using tools that they were already somewhat familiar with. I think the greatest attribution to my success in the remote context is that I really have a very come-as-you-are sort of approach to learning environment. So what that means for me is I'm a what you see is what you get person. I come as my whole self. I make myself accessible to my students, and probably most importantly is right up front at the beginning, particularly in these digital spaces, I situate myself as a learner. So I don't pretend that I know all of the things about how to teach online effectively. I make it a point of saying to my students, this is a particular skill set that I'm working on right now. So for example, making videos, I use a lot of videos in my class. I'll tell my students, this is what I'm working on. I'd love your feedback on this. I create a space for them to give me feedback that's completely unrelated to the course material. And the benefit of that, I think, has been that it's sort of leveled the playing field, and they're willing to give me a bit more space to experiment. And I'm modeling for them that whole idea of the teacher as learner as well. So I think if you were to talk to my students and ask them, because they're really the best sources of information on what I bring to the table, I think they would all tell you that just coming as a person and not being afraid to say, hey, I'm learning, can you support me in my learning has really been a saving grace during this remote learning context. What this experience has taught me about my own teaching approach is emphasizing how much teaching really is a practice. In all of my courses, I endeavor to take a developmental approach, meeting my students where they are, helping them articulate their own learning needs and next steps for their own learning journeys. But teaching in an online context really requires you to be deliberate in everything that you do. So I think that's part of what the challenge is for us as educators moving from face-to-face to an online environment, is that there's a lot of things that happen in in-person interpersonal interactions that you don't have to think about because you do it naturally. Whereas in an online teaching environment, you have to be much more deliberate and you have to put much more energy into making those invisible aspects of the teaching and learning interaction visible. So for me, what the approach has done is it's really highlighted how your practice is constantly evolving. So even though the foundational aspects of taking a developmental approach to learning, using assessment for, of, and as learning in my classroom have always been part of my pedagogical practice, the shift to teaching synchronously and asynchronously online has really emphasized how much thinking actually goes into learning as design and being mindful of the design aspects of facilitating effective learning environments. So moving forward, I think what the university needs to do is really keep embodying that learning spirit and recognizing that we all bring our strengths to our work, whether that's as a faculty member, somebody working in the admissions office, folks working in video production. We're all coming to our jobs and learning every day. And what that means as a learning organization is that we need to be mindful of the fact that we all learn in different ways. And so we all require different things to be effective in our learning. So the most important thing I think Memorial University could do moving forward is to maintain a focus on differentiating supports and asking people what they need to do their job well, and connecting with those people and making sure that we're making decisions with the folks we're working with and not for them, in order to ensure that everybody's needs are being met. Because we've seen that even in the most stressful of circumstances, when folks are given the opportunity to lead their own work, we can all innovate and connect and collaborate in new and innovative ways that benefit everybody within the university environment.